Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Parth sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible. Participants, we are going to start our session in a minute.
પાર્થ સર તમારો અવાજ નથી આવતો જરાક એકવાર.
Yes, sir. Am I audible? આવે છે સર મારો અવાજ?
Hello. But sir, can you hear?
દર્શન સર મારો અવાજ આવે છે?
હા sir. I can hear your voice. But sir નો બી અવાજ આવે છે.
ઓકે. ભટ્ટ સર ને સર આપને આવે છે સર મારો વોઇસ? ભટ્ટ સર?
Am I audible?
યસ સર.
Yes.
Just a second. But sir, am I audible?
Yes,
Okay, sir.
like
Very
my voice is also you are getting.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we are starting our session. A very warm and energetic good morning to all the participants of this FDP on IoT. Today's session is about Industry 4.0 and Industrial IoT. It will be covered by Dr. C.B. Bhatt sir. And Dr. C.B. Bhatt sir is currently working as a principal of Government MCA College, Maninagar, Ahmedabad. He has a vast experience of more than 29 years in academics, industrial projects, and research. He has done his MTech and PhD from the very prestigious Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He is the member of Committee of Regulation of Industrial Internet of Things devices. He is also involved in the designing of smart devices for multinational companies. I now request Dr. C.B. Bhatt sir to carry forward the session and share his expertise with us. Sir.
Very good morning to one and all. I will share my slide. Okay. So today's talk, I'm going to deliver on Industry 4.0 and smart devices. I would not say it is industrial IoT, but I'll say it smart devices. The reason is that industrial IoT, it's actually expressed the very small groups, while smart devices, it includes many devices other than even which comes under industrial IoT. The presentation outline, it will be something like this. First of all, we'll be looking at the types of industries. Then industrial revolutions, starting from, say, we can say industry 1.0 to industry 4.0. What does it mean? Then
Hello,
we
hello,
look at
but sir, please share your presentation again. I think someone has said from a screen, so there was a breakdown. Please share your screen again. I request participants not to share their screens because it is breaking the stream of the presenter. Please. Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
so types of industry, then industrial revolutions. We'll look at industry 1.0 to industry 4.0, how industry automations has changed and how various technologies has been applied in industry. That we'll look at in brief. Then few terminology we'll discuss related to industry 4.0. Then what are the enabling technologies that we'll look at. And finally, at last, we'll discuss about some use cases related to smart devices, and that you can consider as a, industrial IoT devices. So if we look at the types of industry, we can have a primary industries. The primary industries, we can say mining is a, it comes under the primary industries, from where we can get some raw materials. Similarly, crude, petroleums, what we are getting, raw mix, what we are getting from this, all these raw materials, from where we are getting, that comes under the primary industries. Secondary industries, we process the raw materials, we assemble something. Similarly, the green, that is what we call agricultural fields, and brown fields comes under secondary industries and discrete processing. So basically, we can say that at the stage of secondary industries are producer of products, and that the tertiary industries, they are providing the testing services, operation and maintenance, and our coding and testings and all tunings, all it comes under the tertiary industries. And quaternary industries, that is R&D, quality standards development, quality testings, predictive maintenance, all this comes under quaternary industries. So these are the various categories of industries, and the type of automations we used and the type of IoT devices we use are different at each and every industry and at each and every processes. So this is what, so basically when we say, let us we consider the crude industries, then we need to look at the whole supply chain. In true sense, we should say that value chain we should look at. So how the value of raw materials it change if we move further from primary industry to secondary industry and secondary industry to tertiary industries. So here in oil industries, primary productions, that is oil, it is supplied to secondary production stage, that is the manufacturing. Here assembly we can have, so we can have a warehouse. So see the transports, advertising, all it comes under the tertiary industries, and this is whole related to one product, that is what we called a refined oil, and all the at each and every stage we should look at how value addition is being done, and in what sense all these technologies will be useful in value addition. Similarly, we can look at the another examples where we can have a raw materials coming from agriculture fields. We can have a productions, outputs, and customer outlets. So if we look at how automations are applied and what are the different types of processes and different varieties of products we have from industries, we can have a different 4 categories of industries based on their production. So one is that is what we call a continuous flow process. We also know this industry is a continuous process industries in which the output product is one. We can have only one type or very few variations in type of productions, but the amount of productions is very large. So suppose say oil refineries, or if we consider say power plant, so what we'll be getting is our output product is power only, electrical energy, but we are generating in megawatts. So continuously 24/7 these processes are running, and we are getting a very few amount of variations in output productions. So that there we will be using a fixed automation. So the type of automations we'll be using, it is fixed automations. Similarly, there is something called a mass manufacturing or discrete industries. So appliances or automobiles industries, this all comes under these categories. Where amount of quantity, it is comparatively less, the amount of production is, but the varieties we have little bit increased. And here the type of automations mostly we use is programmable automations. Of course, the continuous, if you consider, say, if you are aware about algorithms like PID algorithms, it is used, but at the same time, because of variations in the productions, types of products we require, we also need to have a programmable automations, where we use a PLC, programmable logic controllers. Then batch processes, where productions or type of products varies from batch to batch, and we need to have a different operating conditions for various batch processes. So for one product, the operating conditions of whole plant may be different, and for another product, the operating conditions for whole plant, it will be different. So that is what we call the batch processes. So here the output product, it is in batch, it is in bulk. And here the type of automations we use is flexible automations. And last, that is the jobs of productions. That is we will be using for each and every product, it is a unique in this unique, and here we'll be using machine tools or to develop the prototypes. And the type of automations we use, integrated automations. It includes the flexible automations, programmable automations, at the same time PID, but it is the control systems, it is tuned for a specific product. So this is the segmentations of automations in various industries. Now, if you look at the revolution, how industry evolved from what we can say industry 1.0 to industry 4.0, then industry 1.0, that was the first mechanical looms that was introduced in 1784 through the introduction of mechanical facilities with the help of water and steam power. So in industry 1.0, steam power and water power is used for automation purpose. In industry 2.0, that was the through introduction of a division of labor and mass production with the help of electrical energy. So applications of electrical energy was started, and people, they have started producing in mass. In case of industry 1.0, it was not the mass productions, but industry 2.0, people, they have started producing in mass. First assembly line, that was in Cincinnati slaughter houses. It was in 1870 it was started. Industry 3.0, that was through the use of electronic and IT system. So you can see here 1969, the first PLC was introduced by Modicon. That was Modicon 084, 1969. So applications of computer, it is not new to industry. In fact, it was started well back in 1969. And first programmable logic controller. So programmable logic devices, there is a difference what we are getting integrated chip, and here what we are talking about programmable logic controller, it is for control purpose, where we are using a Boolean logic to control the various processes. This is a difference between, if you have a electronics engineering background, then you may consider PLC means programmable logic chip. It is not that. And we can say industry 4.0, it is through the use of cyber physical system. So here we'll see what do we mean by cyber physical systems in subsequent discussion. But here the horizontal axis, it shows the timeline, and vertical axis, it shows the degree of complexity. So if you see, if we consider say industry 1.0, the amount of complexity was very less, and if we move from industry 1.0 to 4.0, the complexity of systems, the system we need to implement it goes on increasing. So today we are talking about a very complex engineering systems, and that systems integrations required knowledge from different domains. So now we'll first look at terminology. First of all, this is known to many computer science and IT background people. We have a distinction between data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So what do we mean by data? Then raw signals or raw numbers, that is what we call the data. So suppose if I say 1 and 100, 2 and 50, it's a data. It doesn't make any sense to us. So what we need to do is we need to attach some context to it. So when we attach relations to it, relations attached to data, it becomes information. So when I say 1 and 2 are gain and 150 is bandwidth, then now we know that this 1 and 2 is a data for gain and 150 is data for bandwidth. So then it becomes an information to us. But to gain knowledge out of informations, what we need to do is we need to process the informations. So there what we call to attach the purpose. So reasons, principle, rationals, and competence, know-how, abilities, all this, if we process the informations, we'll get the knowledge. So suppose if I say 1 and 100 and 2 and 50, then if we look at the data patterns, then products remains 100. 1 into 100, 100, 2 into 50, 100. So we can conclude that gain in gain in bandwidth products remains constant. So that is the knowledge we gained. Now, actually, wisdom in a philosophical context, we can say wisdom. But in a technical context, we can say that it is a generalization of purpose or competence in multiple domains. That is, if we go beyond that, we'll have a context independent knowledge. So what do we mean by context independent knowledge? And this is actually the now future trend will be in case of IT technology, information technology, because if we process at the knowledge level, if we can apply some fundamental concepts, so knowledge in multiple domains, it will be a very great help. And AI and ML, it is taking us in these directions, and particularly another knowledge engineering aspects, if we consider, that is the ontology engineering, semantic networks. Then IoT, just simply passing the data to cloud and processing the informations and gaining some insight. It's not only the output we can have, but if we can process at higher level, if we can process the knowledge, if we can have some semantic understanding out of the data, it will be of great help. So that is what we call it a generalizations of purpose or competence in multiple domains. Suppose I say that one gain and bandwidth products remains constant. Suppose this data, it is for electronic amplifier. Actually, if we perform the frequency response, take the frequency response of electronic amplifier, we can say that gain bandwidth products remains constant. All electronics engineers, they know it. Now, if we consider a vocal system itself, it is a pneumatic amplifier. It amplifies the sound signals. So if I say sing very loudly, then my singing bandwidth, it will reduce. So the same concept, gain bandwidth products remains constant for vocal system. It also remains the applicable. So it means that I'm generalizing the concepts. I'm generalizing the knowledge gained in one domain. I'm applying in another domains. So that is what actually we mean by here the wisdoms or say generalizations of purpose or competence. Now, what do we mean by cyber physical system? So a cyber physical system is a system in which a mechanism is controlled or monitored by computer based algorithms. So we have a system, so we have a process, and it is monitored and controlled by computer based algorithms. So in cyber physical system, physical and software components are deeply intertwined. So they are intertwined with each other, physical and software components, and able to operate on different spatial and temporal scales. So we can have a very complex systems, like suppose if you consider smart grid, then smart grid, electrical grid, it is supplying a electrical energy to one particular zone in a nation. So suppose say we have in India, we have a western zone grids or southern grid. So that is a spatial distributions. Similarly, we can have a distributions across the time. So exhibit multiple and distinct behavioral modalities and interact with each other in ways that change with context. So if we change the context, it even the way behavior, it may change. So examples of that cyber physical systems include smart grid, autonomous automobile systems, medical monitoring, industrial control. So medical monitoring, all nowadays say telemedicines and all telesurgeries, all it comes under this type of system. Industrial control systems, robotic systems, and automatic pilot avionics. This all are that is what we call a cyber physical system. Now when we talk about say industry, then OT, that is the operational technology, it's very important because we are using IT as a tool to operate the various industrial processes, to monitor the various industrial processes. So here IT, majority of you are from IT background, so you know IT includes any use of computer, storage, networking device and other physical device, infrastructures and processes to create, that is the creations, process, store, secure and exchange all form of electronics data. While operational technology, it is traditionally associated with manufacturing and industrial environment. So all the processes like heat exchangers, boiler, distillation columns, and control valves, sensors, all this, it comes under the operational technology. And it also includes control systems such as supervisory controls and data acquisitions. That is commonly known as SCADA systems. Building management system, it is a operational technology. So in industry, we use IT for monitoring and controls, and now this industrial IoT, it is also add some value in operations, and that we'll see. So what do we mean by value chain? That is another term normally it is used. That it is a whole services. If you look at the value chain, then inbound logistic, that is receiving, warehousing and inventory controls in any industry, that is a first step. Operations, that is value creation activities that transforms inputs into products. So raw materials processing, inputs, whatever the components we received, we assemble and create some products. So that is what we call the operations, such as assembly and manufacturing. It is a second stage of operations in value chain. Third is outbound logistics, that is activities required to get a finished product to a customer. So transportations and inventory management, warehouse management, shipping, all this comes under outbound logistics. Marketing and sales activities associated with getting a buyer to purchase a product. And services activities then maintain and enhance a product's value, such as customer support and warranty services. So all these task activities are part of value chain. And nowadays information technology and concept of IoT, it is applied at each and every stage. So industry 4.0, so internet is available nowadays everywhere. It is simple and it is very cheap also. Devices are becoming intelligent. So what do we mean by intelligent? That we'll discuss later on. Using this and in a smart way to open a new world of services and functions. So we can have some new services available, new functions we can have. And let me just tell you that Industry 4.0, it was the term coined by Siemens, that is a Germany-based company. Industry 4.0 connects all the parties involved in business processes. So whoever the stakeholders in this value chain, all are connected with each other in the manufacturing and process industries. So not only nowadays we have one isolated plant where we have a sophisticated computerized control systems. No, but we have now connections with raw material suppliers, then controls of inbound inventories. Similarly, if once the product is ready, then control connections with the customers and all outbound inventory controls. Everything it is now available. All the data is in a single platforms, and based on the type of task we need to perform, type of the data we required, we use different architectures. Informations from suppliers, customers, and within your own company is connected and transparently it is available. And work PCs and machines manage the production autonomously. That is flexible, efficient, and resource saving. So suppose if we consider, say, I want to purchase a car, and I need to have a car with my own specifications. Then what I do, I log into website of car manufacturer where I select various parameters, various specifications, various features which I need, and I log the order. Then once the order is logged, everything, the control systems at the plant side, it will be automatically managed according to my order, and ultimately I will have my customized car available to me. So this is the type of flexibility in productions nowadays we are talking about. So what is actually the new reality? So what is available today is the cloud technology. It is we can say it is not just a new. It is already we can say more than a decade. We have this cloud concepts and cloud technology available. So the networks, it is old automation devices with internet access, internet-based services. It is that. But what is new ingredient is uniform and sector neutral standards for services and semantics. Now people, they are working on uniform standards than sector neutral standards. So I'm say power sectors or agriculture sectors, and no, what people are now developing is standardizations. They are preparing a standards that is uniform and sector neutrals for services and semantics. And from intranet to now it is moving to internet. So that is what we called a Industry 4.0. So exchanging information between value chain partners, and new business models and applications are coming up with Industry 4.0. So we can say that digitalization at all stages we can have. If it is a discrete industries, then product designs, normally in engineering, what we do, we use various software tools. First we simulate, we prepare the computer-based model. It may be a model for packaging, it may be a functional models. We prepare the functional model, we prepare the model for its industrial designs, and that is where we use the digitalizations, simulation tools, and all CAD tools. Then production plannings, it goes to there also we'll use the digital computer-based systems. Production engineering, again we use the computer applications, so our tools. Production stage also we'll use, and similarly in services also. So similarly, if it is a discrete industry or if it is a process industries, at each and every stage we'll be using a nowadays computer, we can say ICT technology, information and communication technology. So Industry 4.0 is the current trend of automation and data exchange in manufacturing technologies, and it intersects of IT and automation at management level nowadays. So if you look at this, how convergence took place, then industrial automations on the bottom you can see an information technology. So in 1970s, mainframe computer have been introduced. At the same time, even industry, they have started using such computers in that is known as a direct digital control. Then gradually remote IO, logical controllers and robotics applications was started in industry. So there, if you look at 1980s, 70s, the low cost, even microprocessors was started, applications of microprocessor industries was started in remote IOs, logical controllers, and some robotics applications. And mainframe too. If you look at the development in IT, then ERP, enterprise resource planning, was introduced in during this era. In the late 90s, we have a internet available, ERP modules, management informations and exchange systems. All these applications were started. At the same time, industry has started using various digital communication tools, communication networks, communication protocols. So field bus protocols, TCP/IP. Though at that during that period, TCP/IP was not deterministic, and industrial automations required a very deterministic networks, reliable networks, and that is the major concerns even today in real process automations. We are not using the conventional Ethernet internet technology. So gradually it was integrated architectures will have, and today we'll have a we can say 5-layer architectures where various IO devices at the bottom level. On the top of that we have a various controllers, maybe PLC and continuous controllers. On top of that we have a SCADA system. Then on the top we have a MES, and the top of that we have ERP. And in future, all this ERP and managerial levels, it is connected through internet or various devices to plant side. So these are the driver technologies we can say for Industry 4.0, where we have autonomous robots, simulation tools, horizontal and vertical systems integrations, industrial IoT, cyber securities, cloud, additive manufacturing. And additive manufacturing, it is contributing in a very huge way in for flexible manufacturing, where you can design your own 3D model of your required product that is supplied to service provider, those who provides service for additive manufacturing, 3D printings, and ultimately you can have your prototype available as per your designs. Then augmented realities, big data analytics, AI and machine learning. So these all are the various technology contributing to Industry 4.0, and we have many use cases, applications use cases of all this technology. So what is industrial IoT? Then Industry 4.0, it's a very, we can say, big area, and there is industrial IoT. It is, we can say, applications of IoT technology in industry. So that is what we call the industrial IoT, and particularly how it is revolutionizing industry. That technology, that is robotics replacing humans on assembly lines. This is nowadays being applied, and what I was talking about, that customized manufacturing, car manufacturing, where assembly lines, there are hundreds of robots. They are working on various tasks in assembly line, and they are actually directed as per the customer's need. 3D printings, big data, these are all the technology used in IoT, also used in industry. Then processes, constant communication, data exchange between components, decentralized decision making. So that is for routine decisions, there is no need to have a centralized decision making. That we can supply to decentralized decision making. And here, actually, suppose if I have to control a parameters in industry, certain parameters, and it is required to be controlled at fixed values, it is not frequently changing, then such decisions, such controls will be decentralized. It is not that data is supplied to cloud. Then standardization, as of customizations and smart transport systems. These are the various processes will be using in the industry 4.0. And people's, that is increase efficiency, reduction in labor per unit, skill development, that is now for people's, what we need to do is upskilling, reskilling, and continuous learning and mindset change that we have to do, because all this technology, they are changing the way people now working in industry. So rather than having a labor class peoples, what we need is we need to have a skilled labor. So we need to upskill their abilities. So that is what we require, and only to handle disruptions, monitoring and corrections actions that people they have to handle. All routine activities, it will be performed automatically. So what are the design principles we need to consider? That is interoperability, the ability of cyber physical system, that is workpiece carriers, assembly stations and products, everything, humans and smart factories to connect and communicate with each other via the Internet of Things and the Internet of Services. So when we say we are connecting the devices, then they should be interoperable. So that is the fundamental requirement of Industry 4.0. Virtualizations, that is the virtual copy of smart factory, which is created by linking sensor data from monitoring physical processes. So what we have is we have a virtual copy of factory plant, same data which are used for monitoring and control the plant. The same data is supplied to the simulated virtual plant, and based on that we'll have a some decision making for optimization purpose, for customizations, productions and all. So that is the virtualizations that is now required. Then decentralizations, the ability of cyber physical system within small factories to make decision on their own. There are many decisions in industry that should be taken at device level. It is not necessary to transfer all the data at central place and take the decisions, process the data and take the decisions centrally. So decentralization is required. Mostly the safety critical parameters, the control parameters, all are decentralized. All the decisions, control decisions, safety critical control decisions are taken at the device level. And it must be decentralized. And real-time capabilities, the capability to collect and analyze data and provide the insights immediately. So the rate of transfer of data, reliability, and all these things, it is a very important. So capability of collect data, analyze data, and we should have some immediate insights available. Then service orientations, offering of service of cyber physical systems, human and smart factories via the Internet of Services. And modularities, flexible adoption of smart factories for changing requirement of individual modules. So in smart factories, if it is a flexible and modular approach if we take, then it is very easy to integrate. And in fact, the technology on which IoT devices are built, they provide such abilities. So now, what is required for industry and in fact IoT in general sense? Then we can say common communication structure, that is network and protocols we require. What we require is common rules for cyber security and data protections. That is what we require. We require common language, including signs, alphabets, vocabulary, syntax, grammar, semantics, pragmatics, and culture. So we are using language not only say like English script or Hindi scripts or our vernacular language script, but sign is also through sign also we communicates various concepts through vocabularies and all this. So we need to have some common understanding for language. And that language, common language, includes all these signs, alphabets, vocabulary, syntax, grammar, semantics, pragmatics, and cultures. We have a even cultural based certain words we'll be using. So that we need to bring some common language standards. So what do we mean by common? It means all these things we need to standardize. So there are efforts being made to develop the IoT Industry 4.0 standards. This I will take in brief. So available standard considered for that is RAMI, that is the reference architecture model for Industry 4.0. So that it proposes the architecture model, it is a reference model for Industry 4.0. So approaches for implementations of communication layer, what actually they have adapted from other industrial standards. That is one standard that is known as OPC UA. So that is object linking and embedding for process control unified architectures. So object linking, it is if you have used Microsoft tools, Microsoft Office and all Microsoft tools, object linking is concepts where say you can copy some objects from one software tools and paste it in other tools. That is what we called a object linking, and it is not a new concept. The same concept, it was extended for process control, and there we have one proposed architectures for integrating the devices, the various industrial devices with each other. That standards, it is available as a IEC 62501. It is known as a OPC UA, basic standards. The same concept, it is used in RAMI 4.0 framework. Then approach for implementation of an information layer. Here the IEC Common Data Dictionary standards, that is IEC 61360 series and ISO 13584 DES 42. These are the standards referred for preparing. Then characteristics, classifications, and tools to E-class. That is another standards. EDD, electronics device descriptions. It is another standards even used in our day-to-day conventional computational devices like printers and scanners. But the EDD, it is well defined for industrial devices. And field device tools, that is FDT tools, FDT standards. So all these standards are used to prepare the framework for RAMI communication layer specifications. Approach for implementation of information layers, again the IEC Common Data Dictionary, E-class, EDD and FDT are used because it use the both. It provides for communication information layers. And another here, that is the device type management. It is along with FDT, it is used for information layers. So for functional and information layers, field device integrations at integration technology and end-to-end engineering, there is a automation ML. Automation ML, it is a automation markup language. So you all must be aware about that. XMLs, if we prepare some domain specific markup language, similarly here for automations, we have an automation ML. Similarly, ProStep, IVIP and E-class, that is for characteristics purpose. So what RAMI 4.0 propose, it is a 3D framework. So in 3D frameworks, here vertically, if you look at, that is the value chain part, business it shows. On this axis, life cycles and value it considers, and that is another is a connected work hierarchy, in what hierarchical levels will go for, that will look it into brief. So suppose if we consider a first dimension, that is the product life cycle, this one. Here on the top, I have put that 3D model, and the layer dimensions we are talking about, that is the product life cycles, that is the first dimensions. So development, maintenance uses, development, that is the instance, and maintenance uses, these are the actually the type and instance that it talks about. Now what is here constructions plan? So development, constructions, computer simulations, and prototype, that is the first stage in product life cycles. Then model maintenance, software updates, instruction manuals, product changes, all these are comes at this maintenance usage stage. And then production stage. So production, this is the prototype, and here once the prototype is finally developed, we talk about the production. So product quality data and serial numbers, everything, it comes at this instance. And here also we have a services in which we have a maintenance service, optimizations, maybe updates, maybe troubleshooting or recycling. So all this comes under the recycling. So recycling, say product life cycle, it is not only the operation and maintenance, but at the end of the product's life, how we recycle it, that is also very important. So industry 4.0, it also consider the recycling service also, how we can recycle, and it is a very important stage or service also in any product life, because every product now, it has a environmental and ecosystems impact, so that is very important. So second dimensions, that is the business dimensions, we are talking about basic questions about the business idea. So business, function, information, communication, integration, and asset, these are the hierarchy that in this layers. So business, that is that the organization and business process, what is the customer willing to pay for, it is a very important questions. So data and devices used to collect such informations, what is my product supposed to do, what data does my product have to provide, that is informations, and how it should be provided, necessary data, how do I or my customer access the data, which parts of my products are digitally available in the network, and how do I integrate my product with the process to move it in the real world. So it talks about various business processes and how what types of data and how data should be collected in a process. It talks about standards related to that. It also includes the semantic aspects also, what I was talking about, the language part. Then communication layer. So here in communication layer, you can see that is wired and wireless, then Ethernet, Wi-Fi, GSM, 4G, IP, IPsec, UDP, TCP, and the top of that, say physical data link, network and transport. This is the UDP, TCP, and 5, 6, 7. If you look at session, presentations, and application layers, maybe using HTTPS, MQTT. This MQTT, it is used in general even IoT device. But OPC UA, it talks and particularly when we talk about industrial IoTs, there are other protocols also that is known as a wireless HART and CAN protocols. So there are many other industrial communication protocols which are used for industrial IoT devices. So all this, it builds the communication layer specification. So industry 3.0, if we look at the old world, then hardware defines the structure. So type of hardware we use, that defines the structures. Functions are linked to hardware, and communication from one level to the other level. So data from the product, here the device, field device to it goes to control device. There are control device to it goes to stations or SCADA systems. It goes to work centers or management systems, and ultimately enterprise systems. So this is the flow of data Now, in case of industry, and product is isolated. So this product, it is not connected with plant anymore. So once the product is produced, there is no conditional data available about the products to industry at the industry side. So suppose if I have purchased the car, then my car data, functional data, its all other data are not available to the car manufacturing companies. But nowadays, when we say Industry 4.0, we have a our product. It has a it connects with the industry also. So products are connected with industries, outer worlds, customers and service providers, and all are connected with industry. So we have a interconnected complex network at the industry level, as well as devices at industry are connected with outer worlds as well as product also. So nowadays, say suppose if we consider say certain laboratory tools like say sophisticated oscilloscope or spectrum analyzers, then spectrum analyzers, it connects with the internet, and through internet even all the its conditional parameters of device, it can be sent to manufacturer even they can update or repair or maintain the device from remote location. So that's possible, and there are certain few use cases also for such applications. So basically, what this Industry 4 RAMI 4.0 framework provides us is, it provides the reference framework for this Industry 4.0 industrial IoT devices development. So development, production, sales and service, for everything to implement it, it provides the reference model. So RAMI 4.0, it's a three-dimensional map showing the most important aspect of Industry 4.0, and it ensures that all participants involved share a common perspective and develop a common understanding. It's very important to share a common perspectives and share a common understanding, and that is what the objective of development of RAMI 4.0 framework. So now this is the background about what do we mean by Industry 4.0, what type of architectures or services and availables in Industry 4.0, and what's the framework reference models for device to design and develop the Industry 4.0 products, and the efforts to develop the standards that we have discussed. Now, industrial IoT device, or we can say smart device, what do we mean by smart device, and how we can implement design such a device, that we'll discuss over here. So digital communications, naturally when we talk about industrial IoT or digital networks used in industry, then mostly we are considering digital communication. So there are many benefits we had in past, and now we are getting the benefits of new technologies in industry. One is greatly reduced wiring costs, reduced installation and startup time, improved online monitoring and diagnostics, and this is diagnostics parts. Now we have so many use cases about the diagnostics in industry using IoT device. Easier change out and expansion of device, improved local intelligence in the device. So device itself, it's intelligent. So there is no need to send the data, take the intelligent decisions at remote place, and perform the operations. Device itself, it has a inbuilt intelligence, and that these are the benefits we have. Now, if we look at the evolutions of communications in industry, then during 1930s to 1960s, we had pneumatic signals in the range of 3 to 15 psi. It was used to transfer the data parameter values at remote locations. Then almost around we can say 1950s, we had electrical signals started being used to transfer the data at remote place in industry, and standardized signals, it was 4 to 20 milliampere. So in case of pneumatic signals, this the pneumatic signal used to transfer the data, it was standard signals in the range of 3 to 15 psi. So my maximum value, minimum value, it corresponds to 3 psi, maximum it corresponds to 15 psi. Similarly, in electrical signals, 4 milliampere corresponds to minimum, 20 milliampere corresponds to maximum value. And then we had almost during 1970s in direct digital controls. In fact, digital data transmission was started, but that was gained in 1995. Around that, they have started using digital networks in real sense in industry. So this is how various technology actuator sensor interface in 93, it was started. ASI consortium, digital communication protocols I'm talking about. Then CAN protocols, 95, device net, control net, HART in 1989. And in 2009, 10, they have introduced wireless HART, and wireless HART, it is extensively used in industrial IoT. Modbus, then foundation field bus, Profibus. So these are the technology developers at the rightmost column you can see. So smart instruments, what do we mean by smart instruments? That the description smart for a field device has been used in the sense of intelligence. To describe any device which includes a microprocessor and support digital communications. This is the minimum requirement. It has a microprocessors to take the decisions, to process the informations at local level, and it must have a digital communications. It must have an ability to communicate with other devices. So the enabling technology, that was low cost microprocessors and digital communications. These are the two enabling technology. And yesterday, Professor Prajapati was talking about Moore's law. So we have now a very low cost microprocessor available with so many transistors, so many functionalities available in a small chip, and that is really the contributing technology, integrated chip manufacturing technology in development of smart instruments. So why is smart instruments? This would imply extra functionalities. So when we say smart instruments, then conventional automation's functionality, it is being performed by device, but it has some add-on functionalities above what had previously been provided in similar non-microprocessor based instruments. So it has a digital capabilities, accuracy will be improved. So how we can incorporate such features, that we'll discuss. Then ease of calibrations, that we'll also discuss. Then different sensor types and multivariable computations, it is possible, that also we discuss. Some dynamic self-test. So these are the how we can make our instruments intelligent by providing all this functionality, that we'll discuss. So digital communications, that is, it provides the bidirectional communications. If it is analog communications, then it is one directional communications. When we talk about digital communications, naturally we can have a bidirectional communications. Greatly reduce wiring cost, because even if we are talking about a digital wired network, then the amount of wires required to transfer multiple parameters, it's only 2 wires, 3 wires, based on our physical layer specifications of network. Then reduce startup and operating and installation cost. So here actually, if it is analog communications, it is very difficult to operate and install and the devices. Easy change out is very easier. So bidirectionals, this is analog. You can say we require a dedicated wires to transmit the signals, but here in digital communications, we can have only 2 wires to connect the multiple devices. So the amount of wires, it's reduced. This is another important benefit we have here. Actually, Suppose this is a sensor and this one is a actuator. These are the symbols, standard symbols used in industry. So sensor transmit that sensor's data, and so there is one directional data communications from sensor to controller and controller to actuator in case of analog communications. In case of digital communications, sensors can transfer data to controller, but at the same time controller can transfer data to sensors. Similarly here also, and it has its own advantage that we'll discuss. So variables other than primary variables. So suppose if we say we have a heat exchanger, then our primary variable is temperature, but other than temperature parameters, other parameters also we can communicate, we can transfer, and based on that we can have some extra insights. Then device status, that status related, device related status, we can transfer that parameters to processing microcontrollers. Configurations of parameters, it is very easy. Tag numbers that yesterday was talking about, and now when we talk about IoT, then it must be a uniquely identifiable device, and that is the tag numbers, identifications number. And manufacturers and all device related data can be communicated to host. So this is actually the old conventional plants. We have dedicated wires coming from various sensors and actuators, but in case of multi-drop or networks, then same devices, it is connected with 2 wires. So we can have it easily. We can prepare the diagrams, wiring diagrams, install the wires, install the devices. So this is advantage, reduce wiring cost. One variable per pair of wires, increase wiring cost. In case of smart devices, 2 wires for many variables, so it will reduce. So number of wire will reduce, multiple connectors, it is not required. Number of junction boxes required, reduce. Cable tray, size of cable trays, laying the cable trays, time to lay the cable trays, time to mark the, tag the wires, take the network wires, take the sensors wire, take the actuator wires, everything it will reduce. So labeling, cables, clamps, everything it will reduce. So plant, it becomes very clean. Now improved accuracy, and this is in IoT device also. These features we can introduce even in conventional, not in industrial IoT I'm talking about, but any IoT device, such abilities, functionalities can be incorporated. So actually, what are the sources of error? Then one is ambient temperature, variation in ambient temperature, and variation in pressure. And many devices, many sensors are sensitive to variation in ambient temperature or pressure. Suppose if we have connected the IoT device with a drone, and that altitude of drone is changing, then the amount of pressures at ground and amount of pressures at the feet of 1000 meter is different. And because of the pressure variations, the sensors output, it may change. So it means that such compensations many times to have accurate results we need to do. So the variabilities, it can be better controlled in smart devices. We can develop the algorithms for that. Then linearizations of sensors. There are many sensors which are non-linear in measurement range, and we need to linearize it. So always the analog processing, it will not help, but if we have a algorithms implemented in microcontroller, microprocessors in device itself, it can improve the measurement accuracy. Then characterizations over entire span of instruments, it is possible. The number of D2A convergence error, no D2A convergence error will have, because in a conventional analog instruments we need to convert again the digital data into analog. but here directly we are using the digital data, so there is no D2A convergence errors. Increased rangeabilities. What do we mean by rangeabilities? Say suppose I have one sensor, so I have at present tuned for say let us we consider temperature sensors. I'm using temperature sensors for 0 to 50 degrees centigrades. Now that sensors has the ability to sense from say 0 to 250, but in a given applications I'm using from range only from 0 to 50. Now my application requirements change. Then what I need to do is I need to change the range from say 0 to 150 now. So the same sensors I can use. So now what I need to do, just I need to digitally change the performance requirement, the required range. That is what we call it rangeability, change in rangeabilities. And noise resistance. Of course, we are using the digital networks that compared to analog data, analog signals, it is a noise resistance. And because of that, accuracy is increased and greater measurement stability also. So corrections of operating conditions. Let us look at this one examples. There are certain terms which are very specific to industry, like say elimination of loop error or inherent that we'll see inherent temperature insensitivity. Everybody they can understand. The digital electronics, no potentiometer in electronics that can create the drift. So the change in any settings that can be digitally, it can be done. So let us we say we are using analog technology where E0 and E1 are two error represented in terms of percentage. So where E0 is say pressure to resonator frequency converter. So that is the one sensor which converts the pressure signal into frequency signals. And we are using electronics also. So E0 it has a contributions from two different components. One is from sensor and another is electronics circuits used to convert that signals into electrical signals. So that is P2 resonator frequency 1. That error is 0.025% and electronics having an error of 0.175%. So total E0 is 0.2%. Similarly, E1, then E1 is by diaphragm seal temperature change. Now what we have is that frequency converter, that sensors, it is mounted on diaphragm, and it is sealed with the diaphragm. Now that contribution of that mechanisms, it is E1. So where E2, it is by contact temperature change, and E3 by environmental temperature change. So E1, it has a two added, it is having a contributions from E2 and E3. So E2 plus E3 is E1. Now here, what we can compensate in digital. So in smart technology, 0.025 it remains as it is. Now what is E2? Then by contact temperature change. So that contact temperature change, what we can do is we can mount one extra temperature sensors along with this pressure sensor and measure the change in temperature. And if we know how my pressure sensors react with output will change with respect to change in temperature, then we can compensate for that. Similarly, we can measure the environment temperature also, and we can compensate our electronics and this pressure sensors for that purpose. Electronics for that purpose. So what we can do is E2, that is this diaphragm seal part, and E3, this contact temperatures and environment temperature. These two we can compensate. Similarly, if we know the environment temperatures, the drift in electronics card, that also we can compensate, and that 0.175 also we can eliminate. So we can eliminate this 0.175%, we can eliminate this 0.2%, and we can eliminate this 2.8. So we can have only the error contributed by only the pressure sensor. So we can implement the algorithms if the data is available, how my devices, how my components used in electronics cards are responding to temperature and other ambient condition change. We can compensate for that, and we can improve the accuracy. Now calibrations process, we look at how it will useful in calibrations process. Calibrations, basically it is a calibration process. Ultimately what we'll be doing in calibrations, we have some physical parameters, and we have some outputs from sensors or transducers. So basically we are establishing a one-to-one relations between minimum parameter value to minimum output from the sensor, similarly maximum parameter value to maximum output from the sensor. So we can say we have a plot, that is the input parameters against the sensor outputs flow. So here in our case, in industry, we are using 4 to 20 milliampere output, and we have a zero potentiometer and span potentiometer. So we adjust the zero value and maximum value. Now if it is a smart device, then this D2A we don't require. Directly from analog to digital converter, we take it from microprocessors. It is a parameter is communicated through modem to the networks. Now here you can see the sensors 1, sensors 2 will have, and the characterizations, digital trimming and rearranging, it is very easily possible. Now digital trim, that is the zero sensor trim and full sensor trim. So what should be my digital minimum value, digital maximum value? That is what we called a digital trim. So at the end of the A2D may be giving say 000 to 111, whatever the maximum number of bits we have. But 0 and 1 we can adjust in between digital trimming. Similarly, rearranging, that is the what should be my minimum transmission value and maximum transmission value. We can have a digital trim maybe corresponds to 1 milliampere and maximum corresponds to 25 milliampere, but my rearranged output, that is 4 milliampere and 20 milliampere, it may have be corresponds to something different also. So that is what we called a this digital trim over here. So digital maximum minimum we can adjust, and characterization. So this input output, sensor input and my output, digital output or maybe analog output, that characteristics I can adjust, but relationship I can adjust. Scaling is possible. Scaling is possible. Zero elevations, slope adjustment, everything it is possible. So characterizations, we'll look at some. So what is characterization? So basically it is a transfer function of applied pressure. So if we consider pressure sensor, so pressure is input versus output is created and stored permanently. So that is input output characteristics possible. And here we can have, say at the time of productions factory, we have one input output transfer functions stored in a device. Now naturally with the age, there are certain components which have a drift. Let us we consider capacitors or some inductors. Then with the age, their characteristics will change little bit, and the input output transfer functions or characteristics will drift from its factory calibrated curve. So that compensations also it is possible if we know the how my parameters has drifted and or how it will drift with the age. So what is digital trim? Is a calibration function that allows the user to correct the transmitter's digital signal to match plant standards or compensate for installation position. Particularly when we are talking about level sensors or pressure sensors, then the position of installation, it is very important. And there we'll be using, there are two types of trims. One is sensor trims and another is 4 to 20 milliampere trim. So sensor trims, again, we have a zero trims and full trims, two functions we need. So what is zero trim? So it is a simpler 1-point adjustment. It must be zero base, so within 3% of true zero. It is useful in compensating for mounting position of effects or for zero shift due to static pressure in differential pressure applications, and it will not change the slope of the characteristics. So only my curve, it will drift in y direction. The slope of characteristics, it remains same. So that is what we call the zero trim. And zero trim, particularly where I was talking about that pressure sensor mounted on drone, there it actually really it is useful. So zero trim. So this is my say factory curve. Now because of position change in sensors, installation positions, or change in height of where the pressure sensor is mounted, then I need to change the zero. So this is how I have compensated for it. So that is zero trim. Full trim. A full sensor trim is a 2-point process. So it is a 2-point calibration process. Endpoints pressure are applied and all output is linearized between them. It allows the user to select lower trim and higher trim endpoints value to provide a digital calibrations. And here actually the slope it will change. So this is a factory curve. Now low trim, this is my lowest. Actually, this is the full range of parameter I can measures input output. Now actually what I need to do is, this is the minimum point value which I need to so this is actually the minimum value I am interested in. And because of mounting positions or other parameter change, I need to change a relations between process variable input and process variable output. So this is how we change the 2-point full trim in 2-point calibrations. Rearranging, that is in addition to digital trim capabilities, smart device or smart transmitter also have the ability to be rearranged anywhere along their characteristics curve. In essence, the range values are simply picked along a predetermined curve. So here actually this is suppose my full range. Now I am interested in part of this. This is a 1 point and this is another point. This is the range in which I am interested. So I can for one particular applications I can use that. In the same for same sensor, suppose now let us we consider batch process. In batch process, from batch productions to production, my required parameter value operating conditions changes. So what we do, we need to change the range of. So every times we need not to recalibrate the device, but what we need to do is change the range only. So that is what we call the rearranging. So my this characteristics curve is it is already set for installations positions, and if required I can change the range of interest. That is what we call the rearranging. Field calibration. So this devices, it can be calibrated from remote locations. There is no need to uninstall the device from the loop, from the line, from the service, bring it to laboratory, calibrate it and reinstall it. This type of devices, it can be calibrated from remote locations. So these are the field devices located at various positions, maybe a smart grid, or we can say water canal, water distributions networks, or many other distributed systems where we are sensing the various parameters and communicating to central control room. So just sitting at the control room, we can calibrate all the devices. So that is the main advantage we can have. So comfortable plant operations we can have. Another advantage, that is different sensors and multiple variable computations. So it might be able to operate with a variety of different sensor type. So in case of the temperature transmitters, we have a various varieties of sensor transmitter, temperature sensors, RTD, thermocouples, even silicon diode is used as a sensors. So there are many. So what we can have is we can have a built-in computations for the various categories of sensors. Even auto detections of types of sensors connected, it is possible, and there are cases of implementations of such use cases. Very important part of cyber physical system, it is a self-awareness and self-diagnostic features in a devices. So diagnostic, that is the different diagnostic techniques are used to find fault in device. So a technique currently employed by equipment health monitoring software uses neural nets to compare current operations with past operations. So there are use cases in which AI/ML is used, which keeps on monitoring use the softwares to monitor the health of devices. It basically compared the current operations with the past operations, and based on that, it predict or make the decisions where is a fault in device, or whether we need to maintain or service is required for device. Another techniques that is used is majority voting techniques to find the sensor faults. There are certain sensor specific diagnostic techniques also used, and device specific techniques also. So sensor specific and device specific algorithms are used for a diagnostic purpose. So that we'll discuss. So in case of AI/ML, based on the device specific, we have a factory test operations data. We have a current operation data and historical data of the operation of device. Based on all this data, that AI/ML algorithms makes decisions. That is particularly very device specific we need to deploy. Similarly, majority voting techniques, it is a common algorithms used in many devices. In majority voting techniques, the same parameter is measured by the multiple redundant sensors. So suppose if we are using a temperature, we are measuring a temperature, and we'll have three RTDs connected with microprocessors. Then three RTD keep on sending the data, and whose result at the output are compared to each other. And this results of three RTDs are compared, and by voting, that is how many sensors show the same results. So suppose say two sensors show the same results, three show some drifted results. Then majority voting means the maximum two are sending the same results, so that results will consider as a valid results, correct results. So decided what results are correct. So based on that, we'll consider the results. So majority voting techniques, it is widely used in industry, where that parameters accuracy and safety critical systems will have, and decisions are made on that. Hood backup strategy, it is another approach, redundant approach. So where there are two redundant sensors, so if sensor 1 fails, sensor 2 will switch over, take the task. And in addition to a warning message or an alarm communicated the host, basically the function itself, it shifts to redundant sensors, redundant actuators, or redundant communications transmitters. Now let us look at the sensor specific technique. So suppose let us consider pH sensor. So in pH sensors, and our interest is to monitor the health of a pH sensors. So characteristics of pH sensor, it depends on impedance of, there are two electrodes. One is glass electrode, another is reference electrode. And there is a ionic exchange between electrodes, and there is a impedance acting to ionic exchange. So that is what we called a glass impedance and reference impedance. So there are three primary variables which define the health of pH sensors. One is impedance of glass electrode, impedance of reference electrode. So glass impedance, reference impedance, and slope of the characteristics. So normally this glass impedance is defined simply as the age with which the charge created by hydrogen ions can be transmitted through the sensor's glass element. So there is a in glass elements, how easily that charge easily can be transmitted. Hydrogen ions can be transmitted. And if we measure the impedance, it is in the range of 20 mega ohm to 400 mega ohm. Now, with the age, or if glass is cracked, low glass impedance tells that glass is cracked and required replacement. So if it is less than 20 mega ohm, then we can predict that there is a problem with glass impedance, and glass impedance is cracked. If it is a high glass impedance indicate that the glass is either coated or aged and require cleaning and or replacement. So what type of problem is with a particular component of sensors, that we can predict, we can check it, and based on that the predictive maintenance strategy we can implement. So as glass becomes coated or aged, the ability of the glass to sense the hydrogen ions in the process is reduced, resulting in sluggish and or erroneous pH measurement. So this is its consequence. So we'll have a very slow response of sensors, or we have a error in pH measurement. So based on the problem, whether it is a crack, if it is a low, impedance is low or impedance is high, what type of actions we need to take, that we can predict, we can communicate. Reference impedance, that is the reference impedance is defined as the age with which the reference is able to maintain a constant potential with the process. So the purpose of reference electrode is to maintain the constant reference value, potential value, and that reference impedance, it is in the range of 2 kilo ohm to 20 kilo ohm. So as the reference impedance falls, the measurement will drift, resulting in poor control. So slope, so that is means if it is reduced 20 kilo ohm to less than 2 kilo ohm, it will give a poor measurements and we need to replace it. So slope is defined as the number of millivolts. So output of pH electrode is millivolt. So input is, we are measuring pH. So input output relationship, that is what we call a characteristics. So here the slope is defined by millivolt per pH. So it is periodically we can calculate using 2 or 3 different pH values, standard values, known pH values. And it is not a continuous measurement like glass and reference impedance. So in case of glass and reference, we need to continuously measure the impedance. But here it is not a continuous measurement. So periodically we can measure the millivolt output for a given known pH values of solution. As slope drops, the glass electrode is less sensitive. So if the slope drops, it means that glass electrode is less sensitive, and we need to either service the glass electrode, and output will be less accurate. So it means that we can sense the other parameter parameter related to sensors and predict the maintenance requirement, predict the fault with it. Similarly, there is something called a device specific technique. So let us we consider actuator. So actuator can monitor the applied power. So actuator it basically work on some task. So let us we consider a control valve. The control valve regulates say water flow. Then water flow, if it is control valve is fully closed, there is no water flowing through the valve. If it is fully open, it means it is 100% open. Then the maximum flow it will pass through the line. Now let us we say that range of that stem positions, the control valve travel. Let us say it is a 10 centimeters. Then full my travel of that stem, it is 0 to 10 centimeters. That is the full travel. Now how much power is applied to move the stem, that we can monitor. Our actual interest, that is the primary interest, is flow through the control valve. But what we'll be doing is we are measuring the extra parameters related to valve now. So that is a systems device. Control valve is a device, actuator. So how much power we applied to stem, how much force we have applied to move the stem. If it is a that linear motion is converted into rotary motions, how much torque we have applied over time. Or at the beginning, say we need to apply, say suppose if we want to have a 50% of flow, then how much torque we need to apply to close the valve, 50% close the valve. So that parameters we can measure how much torque needed to fully close the valve. Total travel made by stem after installations. So once it is installed, after say 1 month or 6 months or 1 year, how much, how many times it has, how much distance that stem has traveled, total distance. So all these additional parameters can be used to actually monitor the health of the pipe, monitor the health of the valve, and predict the maintenance requirement of pipe and valve. So these auxiliary variables can be used to diagnose numerous conditions like the need for new seal, lubricants, bearing replacements, and many more. So in industry, so when we talk about say industrial IoT, say industrial IoT devices nowadays are not used for primary control purpose. Let me clear this point. So suppose I have a reactor, chemical reactor. So in chemical reactor, I need to control the temperatures, I need to control a chemical inflows, chemical outflows, the pressures and all. So these all are the primary variables of interest, and we have a dedicated control systems for all these parameter controls. But when we say health monitoring of reactors, all our auxiliary sensors and actuators, all the devices, then yes, there are many use cases, say GE, Siemens, Allen Bradley, they have come up with such health monitoring devices for various industrial processes, various devices, various sensors, and those comes under the industrial IoT categories, because those data collected from such devices are not transferred to main control computing device, but transferred to operators and supervisors working in a plant, and they can access such data on their even mobile devices, mobile smartphones and tablets. They can access it through networks from anywhere, any place, anytime, and that is where we'll have a industrial IoT applications nowadays. This is the current state of applications of industrial IoT in industry, particularly from health monitoring and diagnostic purpose. So maintenance and management particularly issues will be using a industrial IoT device. So when we say maintenance strategy, there are 4 maintenance strategy. One is reactive, preventive, predictive, and proactive. So reactive, the philosophy of running equipment until it failed. Then sending for repair a waste of resources, both human and material, and the reactive or run to failure approach is costly and difficult strategy to manage. So nowadays mostly such approach it is not used in industry, but there are devices in which it is used. So high inventory, poor moral, low range effect on product quality, and we have a downtime in case of if it is a very critical device related to industrial process. So preventive maintenance implement maintenance activities more effectively by scheduling periodic shutdown. So here plant is shut down and devices are maintained. So we have a documented repair history. In this case, more accurate inventory controls it is required, better control of cost, and increased labor utilizations. These are the benefits we can have, but here also we have a downtime. So for scheduled maintenance, we need to shut down the processes, maintain the equipments, and many times it is possible that some of the device may not require maintenance, but because it is a maintenance is scheduled, we maintain it, we repair it, we service it. So this is how preventive maintenance, it is comparatively better than reactive maintenance, but it is not preferred one. While in case of predictive maintenance based on accurate measurement of real-time operating conditions of devices and processes we keep on measuring, and this information is readily available and routinely collected automatically by the systems, and these parameters are used to generate a prediction based on certain criteria, and work order can be scheduled according to a demand and required parts. So we can say this type of maintenance, it is just in time maintenance, and it is preferred than previous preventive and reactive maintenance. Proactive maintenance, that imagine knowing ahead of time when your critical valve is likely to fail. So that case studies we have discussed, control valve. So based on that, all the stem travel time, total amount of travel, frequency of travel, torque acting on stem, all these parameters, it is available well ahead in time. And if you can predict that now it is going likely to be failed, so that you can plan your shutdown in advance. So shift to bypass. So in that case, we can bypass, shift the process to bypass devices, and we can maintain such device. As for example, the pH sensor diagnostic supports proactive maintenance strategy. Advanced knowledge of failure and fault conditions saves the time spent troubleshooting or cleaning in an attempt to restore the sensor operations. So directly pH sensors, it can be reinstalled, it can be changed, or it can be that the process can be shifted to bypass process line, and we can either replace the failed or device which required services, we can service it, and we can implement the proactive maintenance. So these are the benefits of industrial IoT device. We can keep on monitoring the health of process, health of device itself, and predict the device failure well in advance, and implement the proactive maintenance, and it will reduce the shutdown time. And all the reports, we can have storage. So keeping accuracy, ongoing record is essential in regulating industries regarding the device specification to maintenance on the device. So suppose if we consider the standards like ISO standard, ISO 9000 approved industry and all. So what they need to do is they have to keep the record of all the devices, their maintenance schedules, their accuracy, their performance, everything it is required. So if such devices are used, industry they can easily maintain such records. They can comply for regulations, industry's regulations. The smart devices provide facility to store specifications, configuration data, maintenance related information locally in device, and can be supplied to host as and when it is required. So even it is such data are stored in device as well as it can be transferred to one central locations where we can have all the informations available related to all the devices and processes related to plant at central locations, and we can easily have a compliance with regulatory requirements. So asset management solutions total. This is the actually what I was talking about. One is control functions, another is maintenance functions. So all the device data which are required for maintenance purpose, it can be used. So that is asset management systems. Nowadays we have a very sophisticated database tools are available, and even web applications are available for asset management systems. And expansion, it is very easy. You can plug your device at any point, any locations. This is what I have shown wired networks, but nowadays we have wireless networks also, and you can easily connect your device at any point in digital networks. So there are standards called device description language, EDDL. EDDL basically suppose your printer. So when you connect your printer with your desktop or any device, laptop, automatically its driver is installed. Device related information is available to computer. So there actually the way basically it's inbuilt. It is a EDDL standard. It is used in creating such files. Similarly, SGML subsets, that is XML subsets, HTML likes descriptions. It supports this EDDL. Basically, it supports it is a subset of SGML. It is like XML like structures. So there are various functions, and these are the examples of implementing EDDL functions in a various devices. FDT DTM, basically it is based on COM-based technologies. It was supported by FDT. So this is another standards it is used. And when we talk about say smart sensors, then IEC 14512, it is a standards where this function like sensor, signal condition, and analog to digital conversions is a network independent task, but there are certain network specific tasks, and where we need to look at the communications protocols standards we are using for communication purpose. So local user interface, application algorithms, data storage, and communications. These are the network specific requirements, and where we need to look at the communication protocols or standards we'll be using in our device design. But this also in any design, it's a very important part, and many times it is a difficult than implementing this digital circuits. So I conclude my talk sessions over here. So if you have a questions, so in our language, completion, if question is true, ask. Else part will look at later. If you have a question, ask. Any question?
I request participants to ask any questions if you want.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So recently in Andhra Pradesh, gas leakage has occurred and so many people have died. So what was the industry fault they have faced? Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
I think Mr. Mahadev Prasad is speaking.
Yes,
We
sir.
cannot hear you. If you can type your questions in chat box.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay.
Hello. Any question? Okay, I'll share my email ID also. So if you have any questions, any discussion point, even you can put a mail to me. Uh, I'll share my mail ID also. No?
Okay, participants. Then, if you don't have any questions, we will. Yes, sir. Madhav Prasad has replied in the chat box.
So here you can note down Chetan underscore part at gmca.ac.in is my mail ID. Even later also you can share your question, any discussion points you have in your mind. I'll share this PPT with you. Okay, so Parth sir, any?
Yes, sir. We will conclude the session here. And dear participants, we are going to meet again at 2 p.m. So we will rest for the lunch break. And the link is also shared by Darshan sir in the chat box. Embedded platforms for IoT session will begin at 2 p.m. All are requested to join that link. Thank you all.
Thank you.